The National Youth Development Agency has launched a Down with Nyaope campaign in Mamelodi, east of Pretoria. They embarked on a door-to-door campaign urging young addicts to make use of its services to distract them from using drugs. Now, Mamelodi is one of the communities worst affected by drug abuse in Pretoria. The National Civic Alliance, SANCO, has joined the South African Democratic Union, SADTU, in criticizing the plan to introduce Mandarin Chinese as a language subject in public schools. The Department of Education earlier announced that the language will be offered optionally as of next year. The South African Municipal Workers Union says the arrogance of the team negotiating on behalf of Rand Water during several rounds of wage negotiations has prompted the union to call for a protected strike. Radio News is leading with the following headlines this morning. Thousands of AMCU members are now expected to converge at Marikana in the northwest for this year's commemoration of the Marikana tragedy. The National Union of Mine Workers says its members will down tools at a nickel mine in Machado Dorp in Mpumalanga, operated by African Rainbow Minerals, after the wage talks deadlocked. And President Jacob Zuma will lead a South African delegation to the SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government tomorrow in Botswana's capital, Gaborone. Well, the Springboks bounced back from their Durban horror show last week to record a comfortable 26-12 win over Argentina and Buenos Aires yesterday after their shock loss to the same opposition a week earlier. What the Boks needed most was a victory, and the win will have relieved some of the pressure on coach Heineke Meyer after a tough week facing mounting criticism from all sides. Joining us this morning in our newspaper analysis and a look at the stories of the week, let's extend a very warm welcome to Rulani Baloyi, SABC radio editor, as well as Dr. Glenda Daniels. She's a Wits Media Studies and also a media practitioner. Ladies, a very good morning to you. It's still Women's Month, so thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank
Great
you for inviting us, and happy Sunday to you too.
Happy Sunday,
Happy
ladies.
Women's Month to you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Let's go straight into it and have a look now at all the news making front pages this morning. The Sunday Times is leading with a story about President Jacob Zuma's wife, Mantuli, breaking her silence on the alleged poison plot. The Sunday Independent has a story about government to conduct lifestyle audits for all employees of the states and its related entities. Now, this was discussed at the ANC's Lekgotla in July. The Weekend Argus is also leading with the very same story. It's quite important this morning. Let's have a look at the City Press now. It has a story about the NPA doing a series of dramatic about turns in a case involving acting PRASA CEO Siyabonga Kapa. Yes, the Weekend Argus, as we've said, is also leading with the story that the Sunday Independent has on the ANC's Lekgotla on lifestyle audits. Let's look at the Sunday Tribune now. Businessman Nick Drenius is suing KwaZulu-Natal Premier's office over unpaid bills. And these are the newspapers from right outside our borders now. Lesotho's Sunday Express, opposition takes fight to SADC. Nigeria's Daily Trust, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan is currently working on his biography, which will be a tell-all book on probes by President Muhammadu Buhari in order to revamp the PDP, gives party executives marching orders. Zimbabwe's Sunday Mail says thousands of workers dismissed on 3-month notices will be entitled to compensation for termination of their contracts if the Labour Amendment Bill gazetted last Friday becomes law. All right, let's start with the Sunday Times, ladies. So once again, a very big story today, how Zuma's wife was ejected by spy boss. Now, according to the Sunday Times, the saga continues at the president's household in the alleged plot to poison the president by wife Mantuli Zuma. Now, this piece talks about Mantuli's sort of side of the story, where she tells how she was kicked out the president's house by intelligence boss David Mahlobo. It's a juicy piece, this one.
Well, you would think so. You'd think that's a juicy piece, but I read the piece, and in fact, there isn't much about the saga, so they tried to make a story out of nothing. We really want to know what happened. All that story says that's new is that President Zuma and his wife didn't have a chat about this alleged poisoning, and that we already knew that the intelligence minister had evicted her and her children. So I'm a bit puzzled about that story and why it's there, because I was expecting something juicy and I was expecting to read something that,
you're waiting for that side of the story. Which side of the story is she going to tell?
Yeah.
Actually, I agree with Glenda, because everything that they said is what we already knew. When they say Mantuli speaks out on the alleged poison plot, I thought maybe she would be able to tell us where the suspicions came from. And it's really not taking the story any further, except that crime intelligence or the state security operatives could be probing this particular story. But you know, Alicia, if you speak to a lot of people who come from polygamous families, they will tell you rumors of jealousy, rumors of plot to poison each other.
Yes.
They always exist. And this story looks like one of those, because, I mean, culturally, the Zuma family should have gone to Mantuli's family to say, this is the reason why your daughter is not with her husband. And that has not happened, according to the newspapers. And so the story, it looks like it's one of those that's still going to
develop.
Yeah, it's still going to develop. We just want to find out, when are the families going to talk and what actually is the real story.
But they do say that they couldn't notify on what was going on because this is an ongoing investigation, Glenda.
Yeah,
so she couldn't be
She
told.
hasn't given her side of the story in terms of, I didn't poison the president, you know, he fell ill on a stomach complaint or whatever. Her story still isn't there. All the story says is that she is cooperating with the police and answering the relevant questions.
And she's saying a lot of people cook for the president.
And she's
All right. Okay, ladies, we'll leave it there until we get the real story. But now let's have a look at page 4, still on the Sunday Times. There it says, out, but still far from over for Oscar. Very interesting. On Friday, Oscar is set to walk out of the Kgosi Mampuru prison after serving just 10 months of his 5-year sentence. Now, the state has, however, according to this article, filed an appeal, which is only set for a November hearing.
I think it's shocking, hey? I mean, I just actually find this quite scary, because femicide for women is the highest in this country, and femicide, as we know, means the murder of women by their partners
spouses.
and their spouses. It's the highest in this country than any country in the whole world. And this man is getting away with murder. This eventualis dolus thing is, it must come out in the Supreme Court of Appeal. What it is, it must be explained to us as the public, that some man took a gun, he shot 4 times, clearly with the intention to kill. Otherwise, why would you shoot 4 times? The fact that he can come out after a couple of months in jail actually makes my heart very, very sore.
During Women's Month.
During Women's Month.
And for me, what really I'm wondering is in the last 10 months, how much of Oscar Pistorius' life has changed? We got to be told he had anxieties, yes. He's got a short temper and all of those things. Has he been able to be rehabilitated, to be able to be brought back into society, to be able to live with other people? Because, you know, when he's under house arrest, of course, he will be relating with other people. If this killing or the shooting happened in a home, is he ready to be living with people? Are we expecting that he's not going to snap when people are going to say things to him, when something small goes wrong? For me, that's the most important thing, because they're saying that it's all about restorative. They're trying, the Judge Masipa, when she handed out the sentence, she said that it's not about punishment, it's also about rehabilitation.
Absolutely.
I just want to find out 10 months, what can you do if you are in a single cell, in a hospital, getting weekly visits from your family and being able to work on the treadmill? How has he been reformed?
Let's leave it there, ladies. And Rulani, it's interesting you mentioned that, because the crux of the trial, actually, they wanted to find out if he'll be able to live among society and not snap when people, come and say unfavorable things. Let's move on now and have a look at another paper there. The Sunday Independence front page says, ANC's drastic shake-up. Now big changes are rumored to take effect in the state following the ANC's Lekgotla, which was held in July. Things like some provinces having to disappear, with more power said to be vested in municipalities. But the good news in this piece, ladies, there might even be lifestyle audits for all employees of the state and related entities. Let's start with you, Milan.
I don't know how this lifestyle audit of all employees of the state is going to work. Audits have been done on municipalities and on other people, but you know, it always points back to numbers and figures and statistics, but nothing really ever happens. If I'm found that I earn 600,000 rand per annum, but my life shows that I spend about 6 million rand per annum, what's going to happen? I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, it's nice to put things on paper, on discussion documents. Whether it will end up being reality is something that we have to keep watching.
Glenda.
Look, I think it's been a 32-month wait for this to take implementation. So they've had this report before on the province's issue. I think the lifestyle audits is very important, you know, even though, as Rulani says, and I agree, nothing much happens afterwards, it's still important for us to get the facts and figures about how many people are they employing and what are these people spending and are they wasting our taxpayers' money. However, if there's something related to provinces and some provinces are not functioning, as we know, Eastern Cape, for instance, something needs to be done. Maybe we do have too many provinces, so maybe there should be this debate that's thrown open, not just to the ANC, NGC, but to all of us to participate in. And, you know, what do we actually feel about all these provinces? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are they wasting our money?
What do you think, Rulan?
And but also the issue of municipalities. We already have a lot of municipalities. Most of them are dysfunctional,
yes,
and people are demanding more municipalities. So I'm not sure if you limit provinces and you create more municipalities, it's going to help in any way. It's one of those things that it's going to take a long while to try and undo. Because if you say now we're going to have 5 provinces, but then you have more municipalities, it's not really solving the problem, because you're creating more municipal managers or municipal offices where, because most of the fiscus is spent at municipality level, and most of it is not properly spent according to the Auditor General's report. And we'll see how the Democratic Alliance feels about this, because they are governing one province, and maybe they think this will have an impact on whether they will be able to get another province to govern.
Interesting observation, and we're going to leave it there, Rulani. But that's a thought, hey, to ponder. Let's now have a look at page 10. It says, Boko Terror, the kingpin, is it dead or just lying low? Now, basically, Chadian President Idris Deby believes that Boko Haram boss Abubakar Shekau is no more, or is in fact keeping a low profile in relation to the fact that he hasn't been seen or heard from in about 6 months. Now, there's also rumor that he's only quiet because he might be starting his own rival faction, as Boko Haram is not clear on whether to negotiate with the government or not. Ladies.
Yes, that's a lot of speculation in that story, because yet again, it's because somebody is not around, or they haven't released a video, terrorist video, or it's not dated, or whatever, you know. It's not a bad idea to put out what the rumors are, but, you know, one wants some facts and figures. Boko Haram's a very dangerous organization, as we know. So we need to get rid of this kind of Islamic fundamentalist terrorism in the continent because of killing of people, especially girl children that are affected by kidnappings, etc. But we need to get more investigative journalism done maybe on the continent, so we can, so we can get facts.
Because you see, with militant groups all over the world, sometimes leaders, you'll just not hear from them. How many times was Osama bin Laden before he really died? How many times was he killed? I mean, there were rumors of he was spotted in all these places where he was, and until he really died, when he did, there were a lot of rumors. Even that guy in Afghanistan, the leader of the Taliban, Mullah Omar, remember, there were stories that he had died long before, and then now we get to be told he died 2 years ago. They're only telling us now. So these people are very organized, and maybe for them telling us that this guy has died, they think it might have an impact, or it might have an impact on other members of the militant groups, the operatives. So sometimes you don't want a dead leader because it might have an impact on your militants on the ground. You just want them to keep on believing he's around.
To keep resurfacing, basically.
Videos.
All right, ladies, we're going to leave it there now and take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to continue with the newspaper discussions. This is Media Monitor. Do stay with us.
Remember the lives of the 44 South Africans who died in August 2012. For 3 years, the families of those who died waited for the Marikana Commission of Inquiry report to be released in the hope that it would provide answers and closure. It provided neither. Not a single member of the executive or the South African Police Service has been held to account for the loss of life. This week, the families of the 37 miners killed at Marikana filed a civil case against the Minister of Police claiming compensation for the loss of their loved ones. They've been forced to do so out of necessity. Those men who died on that day were not only miners, they were breadwinners, they were caregivers. Those 37 miners supported 326 dependents between them.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. If you've just joined us, our media experts today are Rulani Baloyi and Dr. Glenda Daniels. Let's now have a look at the City Press's front page there. It says, Agama tries to gag us. Very interesting. This story had tags wagging all week. Interesting revelation of how the NPA is handling the whole issue. They are said to have done a couple of about turns, in this case with the Siyabonga Gama. Now, Judge Lamont was approached to grant the interdict, preventing City Press from actually publishing anything about Mr. Gama, linking him to any acts of criminality. Ladies.
Well, good thing that Judge Lamont didn't grant it, because we need to know what's going on. This is a very important state institution. It's a 95 million tender involved that's under investigation. I don't know what, under what criteria he thought that City Press couldn't publish. So thank goodness the story's come out. We mustn't forget that Gama was axed 2 years ago and he was brought back again, and now he's under investigation again. So maybe the first time he was axed, it should have stayed as it was. We just need good people to be in there with these.
Proper leadership.
Yeah. And I was thinking, when the court case went to court yesterday, I thought it was going to be a very big story that City Press was being prevented from publishing. And it was all about the NPA saying, we're not sure if someone is going to be prosecuted. No, maybe someone could be prosecuted. And, you know, we don't know what's going on. The NPA is the one which really caused the problem, because the Gama is saying that I'm not going to be prosecuted for anything. And the NPA, if you read that story, you see different messages from the NPA saying one thing. In the next hour, they change the statement and all of that, which means that, I mean, an 18 million rand tender becoming 95 million rand, it's something that would really get anyone talking. And with all these state-owned institutions, things that have been happening, it would be interesting to know what actually went down with that particular tender, which involved the former communications minister.
Yep.
Glenda,
Yeah,
anything
I
else?
totally agree. I agree with Trelawney. It's actually very sad. But, you know, the fact that we have a media that's uncovering this stuff, we should really, really be grateful in South Africa, in our country, for the fact that the media is playing such a role in democracy. So even though we're getting all this stuff, in a lot of countries, we mustn't forget, these are all suppressed. Even countries with democracies as old as Switzerland and the United States. So some reporters are not allowed to get these stories out, or they don't even want to uncover. So our reporters, we must be proud of them.
That's what I wanted to ask, Glenda. Like, do we have to now get court interdicts in order to write stories? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, the courts are on the right side.
All right, well, let's leave it there now and have a look at page 16, still in the very same paper, and it reads there, Mugabe to hand over SADC chair. Well, his one-year tenure is over as SADC chair, and he's set to hand over power to Botswana's Ian Khama, who's currently his incumbent deputy. Now, Khama, very interestingly, has openly criticized some of Mugabe's views on certain continental issues, and it's no secret that there's been public friction between the two at the summits in the past year, Rulan.
Yeah, I think it would be so interesting to see what Ian Khama will do, especially about the movement of people in the SADC region. Remember when we had those xenophobic attacks in April in South Africa, and President Zuma was saying that leaders in Africa should ensure that their people find reason to stay in their home countries, because people leave if they're hungry, if there's no economic activities, they will want to go to other countries. And Mr. Khama agreed with President Jacob Zuma. Let's see what impact he will have on helping people in SADC to try and stay in their countries, and how him being president of SADC will have an impact of his relationship with President Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe.
What do you think?
Look, I'm tempted to say anyone is better than Robert Mugabe on the continent, but I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is that Ian Khama was a huge hope for the future with his democracy and all that. But we mustn't forget, he's been ruling on miniskirts in Botswana, on alcohol consumption, on homosexuality. So he's not as progressive as we might think. He's not a despot in the same way as the Mugabe and the Zimbabwe situation. And in fact, in many ways, Botswana's got a stronger economy than South Africa. So, you know, there's a lot of freedom in Botswana, except for these little things, or big things. You can't tell people when to drink alcohol and when not to drink alcohol. And to have a death sentence and homosexuality is criminal. You know, I mean, so we have to watch Ian Khama as well.
All right, we'll definitely be keeping our eyes watching there on what's going to happen in SADC. Now, let's move on to other news now. Trade union AMCU says people from all walks of life are expected to attend today's third commemoration of the Marikana tragedy. The event is expected to start at 10 o'clock this morning, right after our show, and at 5 minutes before 4 o'clock, there will be a moment of silence that will be observed to pay tribute to those who were killed on that fateful day. Now, the Northwest government and the provincial ANC structure earlier said that they were not invited to the event.
Yeah, I mean, the ANC has never, even last year, they didn't attend the function, and they were saying that they were not invited. I think this has been a very divisive tragedy happening in Marikana. We're seeing the police being responsible for the deaths of 44 police officers on the 16th of August. And we're seeing government being vilified. And I think it's one of those issues that if we were in the 1990s, I would say it should go to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because it has divided AMCU and the NUM, and it's divided the ANC government. And in most cases, we find that the EFF is the political party. They're saying that all political parties have been invited, but mostly the EFF seem to be to dominate the event. And it's one of those situations that it's a very sad part of our history in South Africa, but it would be nice where we could reach a stage where our government could be seen to be commemorating or marking in respect of all those 44 people who died in August in 2012. And I think we're still far from that. And it really makes me sad as a South African to know that we still can't sit together and say, let's meditate and think about it as a country? What could we do differently?
On your word there, Rulani, mentioning that, it's become, about parties and why is it political, Glenda?
It's political because it's the first time in our democratic South Africa that we've had something so ugly. But I just want to say about the Marikana thing that firstly, it should have been the Commissioner, Ian Farlam, who gave a summary of his report, not the President. And secondly, what I really would like to have seen 3 years later is some apology by the executive, the police, Ria Pierha, all those, whoever was it, Cyril Ramaphosa. So all of those people should have been apologizing to the widows and children and the people of South Africa for killing 44 people. We haven't seen that, have we? So this is, from Rulani, quite an interesting idea about a truth commission for the Marikana, where widows and children of these people, everyone can come up, including reporters who were there, and say, this is what I saw, and we can have people asking for forgiveness. The Ria Pierkas, those policemen who shot, we should actually have something like that which could heal this issue. Otherwise, these divisions are going to continue, and it's going to be a blight and a blot on our democracy forever.
All right, we're going to leave it there, ladies. Take a break, and when we come back, we're going to analyze how the crippling mining industry will see many lose their jobs. You don't want to miss that. Do stay with us.
This is not a road, it's an invitation. This is not driving, this is carving. These aren't bad conditions, because there's no such thing. Okay, this is treacherous, but so what? This is not a mountain, this is the next level. All conditions are perfect conditions. The new Audi Q3.
The matter before us today is a very sensitive one, as it also involves the lives and suffering of real families who have lost their loved ones. It is therefore important that we in this august House of Parliament show compassion and support to all those families without exception and disabuse ourselves of the temptation to score cheap political points from the suffering of our people. It is one thing on a very busy road to indicate left and keep on turning right. It's dangerous that what the other members are doing here. And for the record, Honorable Deputy President Ramaphosa, the Commission had made no findings against him.
Welcome back. We are honored to have in studio with us SABC radio editor, radio news editor, Ms. Rulani Baloyi, as well as Dr. Glenda Daniels in our studio this morning. Let's move on. And now, before we look at the stories of the week, the Citizen editor, Stephen Motale, shocked a lot of people in the media fraternity this week with his opinion piece apologizing to President Jacob Zuma. Ladies, what did you make of this move? Rulani, let's start with you.
As someone who's a colleague, I would say it's his own opinions, and I think we have to respect that. Absolutely. This is all I'm going to say.
So I can't even ask for your opinions on opinions, Glenda. Am I forcing
That's
you?
the story. I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. What is he apologizing for, please? Sorry
Right.
that I have to ask you.
Let's leave it there, Glenda. It's fine. We'll move on to the next story now. Let's have a look at the stories of... But Rulani, before we move on, did you think the apology was genuine? Since Glenda missed the story. Let's just hear that.
Okay,
I know, I'm
bits
pulling
and
your
pieces.
arms, I'm twisting your arms.
I know, you're trying to get an answer from me. You know, I don't know if it was genuine or not, because, you know, we've had a culture of people writing open letters for anything in South Africa. And we don't know what pushed him to write the letter. It would be interesting to have him in studio and ask him, what made you to decide to write that letter? It's like someone who's just been saved, who've seen redemption of sorts. You know, this is what I've been doing, and now I'm ready. Forgive me for my sins. And yeah, that's all I'm prepared to say, that, you know, we all have opinions. We should write open letters and apologize for things that we think are going wrong. But we will be watching how the citizen going forward deal with stories of national importance which involves the president.
All right, and that's where we're going to leave it now. Remember, during the course of the week, some stories outshined others. Let's take you through those stories now. South Africa should brace itself for strikes in the gold and coal mining sectors. Ladies, wage talks in the gold sector came to a deadlock. AMCO and NUM rejected gold producers' final offers. Are unions' demands reasonable? That's the question now. And coming from the issues like Marika and Glenda, what do you think?
No, look, I mean, I think our unions' demands are actually unreasonable given the economic growth rate that we have in the country. It's very clear that we need at least 7% growth rate to deal with the unemployment problem, crisis that we've got in the country. So I think those people who have jobs should actually tone down their demands. Having said that, I think the people at the top, the CEOs that are earning huge bonuses of 7 million, etc., it's just unacceptable. That's what actually makes my blood boil, because they're prepared to say, you miners are earning 10,000 Rand a month, stay at 10,000 Rand a month, but we'll continue to get our 7 million Rand bonuses. So something has to happen at the top, as far as I'm concerned, even more radically than what has to happen at the bottom. Given that, I think every time we come to strike season, the unions start making demands such as we want 18%, when you know it's actually only 6% inflation or whatever. So I think demands on the union side must be toned down, but there's got to be some kind of symbolic effort made at the top to say, I won't take those bonuses. I don't need to be paid 25 million Rand a year. We're not getting that kind of value from them, these CEOs of mines, etc., for them to deserve whatever, those millions a year.
And then you look at the job threats.
Yeah, but also on the other side, you can say that AMCU have been asking for 12,500 Rand for the past 4 years. They haven't increased it to 15,000 Rand. And then you're saying, but what is it that the mine workers' unions should be doing to make sure that people earn proper salaries? Because the problem is, in mining towns, people are living in shacks. If you go to Marikana, if you go to all these other places, people are making very little money. And when you when you find that people are actually not making ends meet, so it's a situation of, when you start at the bottom, how much should be the entry level salary of a mine worker? And what the unions have been saying, that the gold prices and the platinum prices are now down. But in the past few years, when they were high, they were not even paid higher amounts. So those profits were made in the past few years. Can they be trickled down to the workers?
All right, we're going to leave it there and now move on to this story. President Jacob Zuma announced earlier this week that a plan to save water and billions of rands in losses and create thousands of jobs is to come. Now, still on this week's stories, police were in a gun battle with rival gangs of illegal miners known as Zamazamas in neglected mine shafts in Ekuhuleng. Ladies, Glenda, let's start with you. Let's start with
which story?
Let's start with President Jacob Zuma's plan to save water.
I'm sorry to sound cynical, Alicia. It's good
stories
news,
to tell.
but, you know, it's a good story to tell. But, you know, we just want implementation. I've just, over the last 10 years now, you've been hearing about government's got this plan and this implementation, 100,000 jobs, by then 500,000. It's all fantastic, but we want to see it. I believe a month ago, though, there's been a slight increase in the number of jobs that the public sector's created. But, you know, aren't you... It's fantastic. It is good news. But, I mean, don't you just want to see unemployment go down? And they're actually creating these jobs.
Yeah, Brenda is right. I mean, there's green papers, blue papers, white papers on...
Yellow papers.
Yeah, on water, electricity, jobs, and everything else that comes with it. But the most important thing is that we're coming with a plan to save water, and we don't actually... They're saying that as South Africa, we don't really have enough water resources. And how do we save on the little that we have? I mean, the whole thing of prepaid meters for water, is it working? What are we doing with our water purification plants? Most of them are over 100 years old, especially with places like at the Rainwater. Where do you start? If you can't sort out electricity, I mean, continuous electricity supply, how are you going to sort out the electricity plants? It's nice, you know, it's some of those things to say this is what we're going to do, and we will continue supporting the president. We're hoping that some is saying they're going on strike at Rainwater. It's going to affect a lot of people in South Africa, and we'll see how that strike pans out if it does happen.
All right, well, we're going to leave it then, take a quick ad break, and after that, we look at the police commissioners who apologized before the parliamentary committee earlier this week. This is Media Monitor. Do stay with us.
Now, one aspect that we and our leader, Reverend Meshwe, did raise, and that has not received sufficient attention, is the role of Sangomas in this whole issue. A statement of an undercover security superintendent was handed into the commission. Read page 106 of the report. And this confirms that a Sangoma promised miners that they would not need to fear firearms or bullets, that the bullets would jam, that there'd be a jamming of the firearms, and that bullets would turn to water. Now, these are very serious allegations, and it's interesting that regrettably the particular Sangoma, Mr. X, was murdered. Why was he murdered? Was there something that was hidden away? And we believe this is an aspect that should further have received investigation, because whilst it doesn't exonerate the police, we believe it could have contributed to the volatile aspects when you see what happened at the beginning.
Welcome back. Let's now continue with the review of the week's top news. It seems as General Piega's story won't die anytime soon. Ladies, your comments, please.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the Piega story mustn't die soon. I think more needs to come out about how those miners were shot and whether she actually really should be there. Now her commissioners are she's losing support from some of her commissioners. That's actually a very good thing because they're coming out with the truth and they're apologizing. She must actually give way, Ria Piecha, and she must actually say, look, I erred terribly. I apologize for my role in this. I did the wrong thing. Somebody else needs to take over as police commissioner, I'm afraid.
What do you make of all the commissioners withdrawing their support now?
You know, for me, I cringed when I was watching that apology from Parliament. For me, it was unprecedented. How do you take leaders into Parliament and say, you start apologizing? It sounds just like all these learners who are in trouble with the headmaster being brought before the headmaster to apologize in front of the whole school to say, whatever you did, you must say you are sorry. For me, it was unprecedented. And it goes to show how, it goes to show how Ria Piecha is being isolated by people in the police department and also by the Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police, and they're taking this very seriously. And also, but on the other hand, except for the apology, for me, the provincial commissioners didn't have to send out that media statement supporting her, especially after the president instituted is checking out her fitness to hold office. I think it's something that could have been avoided. And we're not really sure if they really support her, or maybe someone said to them, go ahead and sign that apology.
We don't know yet. So
we don't know who's who, but
so
all I know is that she's alone.
Watch the story.
Yeah, she's alone as it is.
Well, ladies, we're going to leave it then. Continue now with maladministration, race discrimination and disorder in schools didn't fail to make headlines this week. Let's start with corruption, please, ladies.
The corruption about the exam papers, for instance, it's quite terrible that teachers, I mean, that just actually makes you really depressed, doesn't it?
It does.
That teachers were helping their students because they actually know they didn't do their job to teach those children those sections. So those teachers and the education system, they're failing us. Because education is the one thing that's going to get us out of the mess that we're in today. Our future relies on those young people getting a good education. Do you know how important this is? And to have this kind of corruption, these teachers must be dealt with in the strongest possible terms. I don't know what that means and what that, but they must just
politics speak.
We're not going to ask you, Glenda. You'll probably send them outside the country. Rilani, what do you think?
I was shocked by the report that was released by about Glen Vista High School, which was released by the MEC on Monday, about how money is being shuffled in schools. You know, people take their children to former Model C schools and hoping that they're getting the best deal. And now this comes out that they're actually paying for holiday homes for the school principal and other people paying for carports and all of those. But also the DA has asked the MEC to release forensic audit reports into other 158 schools in Gauteng. So Glen Vista was just one school. But what's happening with all the other 158 schools that they have conducted forensic audit reports? Because now, if we're having corruption at schools, how are we going to deal with corruption at municipality and in government offices if we can't even manage schools and we're all trying to take? You know, it's like we, as a country, we're all trying to take more than we deserve from the people who can't afford.
Sense of entitlement.
All right, ladies, very strong views about this topic, don't you have, Glenn? All right, we now have a look at the stories that kept people talking from outside our borders. Head of the UN peacekeeping mission in Central African Republic has resigned following a fresh round of misconduct allegations, including rape and killing by peacekeepers. Now, this comes after pressure from UN General Secretary Ban Ki-moon, who demanded the resignation of Babakar Gaye. UN focal point, peacekeepers, ladies, let's talk about this, which goes against creating peace. What do you think about this story? Rulani, let's start with you.
It's always been a problem that soldiers which are deployed in peacekeeping missions or in war zones, there's always rumors of sex, I mean, there's always rumor of child sex and rape, women being forced into sleeping with the soldiers. So it's been a very big problem. And I'm so glad that Ban Ki-moon decided that this has to be discussed at the United Nations, and they dealt with the head in the CAR. He actually decided to resign following those reports coming from what has been happening. And we also in South Africa, we have soldiers in the DRC who there've been reports, there've been allegations leveled against them about rapes and all of those things. Because in situations of war and peacekeeping where there are soldiers, there's always reports, and I'm so glad that the United Nations is trying to deal with the situation, saying, as the UN, because we deploy these peacekeepers, we have to try and uphold the laws. We have to try and protect the women and children, and which doesn't really always happen. If you're going to be a peacekeeper, you must be able to uphold higher standards, because soldiers are trained to be able to conduct them in a specific way. So I'm so glad that the United Nations is discussing this issue. And let's hope it's going to help, especially in African countries, because women and children are the most defenseless people, and they need to be protected.
Very quickly, Glenda, look, the SANDF was actually fingered in a scandal about this not so long ago.
And what are we going to do about it? You know, we need to do, and we need to make some kind of statement. I haven't seen anything come out by our government on the fact that what we can do about the soldiers that have done that.
Maybe a court-martial.
On Women's Month as well, when we're supposed to have a heightened awareness of abuse against women and children, this happens. It's quite pathetic.
All right, well, ladies, before we wrap, let's quickly find out what you think will be leading stories this coming week.
Oscar Pistorius on Friday, the 21st, he's coming out of jail on parole, and his family are saying there's no release party. And also SAMU threatening to strike at Rand Water. And then the ANC tomorrow is releasing their discussion documents for the NGC.
All right.
I'd be very interested to see what those discussion papers are about, especially related to the media, because I'm a media freedom activist. I want to know that there's no media appeals tribunal, etc. So I also think the Oscar Pistorius story is going to be a running one. I think the Marikano Commission, what happened today, is going to be a big thing. And I think the strike, the mining issues of strikes, I hope we can somehow try to reach 3-year agreements rather than every year agreements, so we don't have to deal with the stress of strikes every year.
It's strike season, Glenda. It has to happen. Yeah. All right. Look, well, before we go, before we wrap, let's quickly see. I want to hear your views on the BAC advert that caused storm on social media. Now, following overwhelming criticism on social media, pen manufacturer BIC has retracted and apologized over a South African Women's Day advert that was branded sexist and offensive to women. Ladies, please.
Very
Glenda,
offensive.
you've been very vocal.
Very offensive to women. And I mean, you know what I thought? I read that ad and I thought, are they for real? Did they make a mistake? And my view is actually it's done out of ignorance. They're not even thinking straight about how offensive this can be to women. Think like a man, etc. I mean, really?
Yeah.
Imagine if we all had to think like men. What kind of world would we have?
I'm actually shocked. But Relani, what do you think? Are we not supposed to see the other side of what this advert says?
I personally feel that in South Africa, especially us in the media, sometimes we expect our race or sexist or class jokes or whatever our opinions to make sense to everybody else. You know, there are things that are very sensitive, and whether we like it or not. I mean, I was watching our UN, she's head of UN Women, our former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo, saying that she doesn't like sexist jokes, she doesn't like racist jokes. And there comes a times when, as a country, we have to decide what works and what doesn't work. Absolutely. Because it has an impact on our advertising, the things that we talk about, things that we accept one day and tomorrow we don't want to accept. We just have to we have to decide this works and this doesn't work. Because some people don't mind racist jokes, some people do mind. So it's as the media, because people in advertising are part of the media, we have to decide how we're going to be part of positive influence to South Africa, especially when it comes to Women's Month and women's issues.
You see, that's why we're pushing for a female president, or rather the ANC Women's League was pushing for a female president, somebody who understands issues like this. Ladies, you've been absolutely amazing this morning. Thank you so much to both of you, Ms. Glenda Daniels as well as Rulani Baloyi. Thank you so much to all our viewers for joining us today. Remember that your contributions and suggestions are highly valued. You can email us for any suggestions as well as compliments. Our email address is mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. We're also available on Facebook, www.facebook.com/MediaMonitor. Tick like next to our page. We're also available on Twitter @SA Media Monitor. And to get our repeat broadcast, do tune in at 2 a.m. But if you can't wait or you'll be fast asleep by then, www.youtube.com/SABC News for all our online updates. Our website is www.sabc.co.za/news to get more info on the stories on our info boards today. From the whole QTIV team and our guests today, thank you so much for joining us. Do have yourself a blessed Sunday. I'm Alisha Jali. This is SABC News. Goodbye.